Story number 1. The Secret Room. I've worked in retail for most of my adult life. Walmart isn't glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps me busy. The days blur together, a monotonous blend of scanning barcodes and stacking shelves. But every once in a while, something breaks the routine, something you can't explain, something you can't forget. This is one of those stories. It was the summer of 2017. And the Walmart where I worked in a quiet town in Georgia was undergoing renovations. The store had been there for decades, a hulking relic of retail that had seen better days. Management decided it was time for a facelift, and construction crews descended like a swarm of bees, tearing down walls and replacing old fixtures. For the employees, it was business as usual, except for the constant noise of drills and hammers echoing through the aisles. I worked in the warehouse, far from the commotion, organizing shipments and restocking inventory. But even back there, the vibrations from the construction made the walls tremble, unsettling the stacks of boxes like a giant's footsteps. One afternoon, while I was sorting deliveries, a foreman burst into the warehouse, his face pale and eyes wide. "We found something," he said, his voice low and urgent. "What do you mean?" I asked, setting down the box I was holding. "There's a room," he replied, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone or something to follow him. "Behind the west wall of the warehouse. It's been sealed off for God knows how long." The warehouse fell silent, the usual hum of forklifts and chatter replaced by a heavy, expectant tension. A few of us followed the foreman to the far corner of the warehouse, where a section of the wall had been torn down. Behind it was a doorway, its edges jagged from years of neglect. The air was thick with dust and a faint metallic tang that made my stomach churn. Inside the room, the light from our flashlights revealed a scene that felt plucked from a nightmare. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper, yellowed and curling at the edges. In the center of the room stood a rusty bed frame, its mattress stained and torn. A small wooden table sat in the corner, covered in old newspapers and faded photographs. It was the photographs that unsettled me the most. They were black and white, the kind you'd expect to find in an antique store or a family album. But these weren't ordinary pictures. Each one showed a person, a man, a woman, sometimes a child, but their faces had been meticulously scratched out, leaving behind empty ovals that seemed to stare back at us. "What the hell is this?" someone muttered, breaking the silence. The foreman shook his head. "I don't know. This wasn't in the blueprints. This room shouldn't exist." As we explored further, we found more disturbing details. A leather-bound notebook sat on the table, its pages filled with frantic, scrawled handwriting. The words were disjointed, fragmented sentences that made little sense. "They watch, always watching. The room keeps them out." And beneath that, written over and over, "Faces must be removed." A chill ran down my spine. I wanted to leave, to forget I'd ever seen the room. But curiosity held me in place, a morbid fascination drawing me closer to the table. That's when I noticed the mirror. It was propped against the wall, its surface clouded with grime. But as I wiped it clean, I saw something that made my blood run cold. In the reflection, the room looked the same except for the shadows. They moved independently of the objects casting them, shifting and writhing like living things. "Did you see that?" I whispered, stepping back from the mirror. "See what?" one of the workers asked, his voice tense. Before I could answer, the lights in the warehouse flickered. The air grew colder, and a low, guttural hum filled the room. The shadows in the mirror twisted violently, converging into a dark mass that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. "We need to get out of here," the foreman said, his voice trembling. We scrambled out of the room, slamming the makeshift door behind us. For the rest of the day, none of us spoke about what we'd seen, but the unease lingered, a heavy weight pressing down on us. That night, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the scratched-out faces, the writhing shadows, and the words scrawled in the notebook. The next day, The foreman announced that the room would be sealed off again. "Management's orders," he said curtly, refusing to elaborate, but rumors spread quickly among the staff. Some said the room had been used for storage decades ago and forgotten. Others whispered about a drifter who had lived there secretly, carving out a space for himself before meeting a grim fate. But the truth was stranger and darker than any of us imagined. Over the next few weeks, strange things began to happen in the store. Employees reported hearing whispers in the warehouse. Faint and unintelligible but undeniably there. Items moved on their own, sliding off shelves or appearing in places they shouldn't be. And then there were the shadows, dark shapes flitting across the aisles, always just out of sight. One night, while working late, I heard footsteps echoing through the warehouse. Assuming it was another employee, I called out, but no one answered. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they stopped just behind me. I spun around, my heart pounding, but the warehouse was empty. That's when I saw it, a figure standing in the far corner of the warehouse, shrouded in darkness. His face was obscured, but I could feel its gaze, cold and piercing. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, but its presence was suffocating. I backed away slowly, my breath shallow and ragged. The figure took a step forward. I bolted, sprinting toward the exit and not stopping until I was outside, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap. I never went back into the warehouse alone after that. Eventually, the renovations were completed, and the room was bricked up, the secrets hidden once again. But the activity didn't stop. Customers began to report strange occurrences. A cold spot in aisle 12. The sound of children laughing in the toy section late at night. Employees quit without warning, unable to handle the oppressive atmosphere. I left the store a year later, unable to shake the feeling that something had followed me home. To this day, I can't look at old photographs without thinking of those scratched-out faces, their hollow eyes staring back at me. Sometimes, late at night, I hear whispers in my house. Faint, almost imperceptible. I tell myself it's just my imagination. But deep down, I know the truth. The room isn't just a memory. It's a warning. Story number 2. The Haunting of Aisle 7. I've always taken pride in my job as a night shift employee at the Walmart in Ohio. There's something oddly comforting about the stillness of the store after hours. The quiet hum of fluorescent lights, the rhythmic beeping of scanners, and the soft rustle of aisles being tidied. It's a far cry from the chaos of the daytime rush, offering a sanctuary where I can reflect and unwind. But that sanctuary was shattered one night, turning my peaceful routine into a nightmare I still can't explain. It was late October 2013. A night when the air carried a crisp chill and the scent of fallen leaves wafted through the parking lot. I had just settled into my usual spot behind the customer service desk, the only other souls in the store being a few fellow night owls like me. We shared stories and jokes to pass the time, the camaraderie making the long hours bearable. Little did I know, something sinister was lurking just beyond the peripheral vision of our tranquil shifts. For weeks, I'd noticed something strange happening in the warehouse section. It started subtly, shopping carts inexplicably moving from one aisle to another, sometimes rearranging themselves into odd patterns or converging at the ends of aisles as if guided by an unseen hand. At first, I dismissed it as a prank by some mischievous employee or perhaps a glitch in the store's automatic cart return system. But the occurrences became more frequent and unnerving, casting a shadow of unease over the otherwise mundane night shifts. One particularly quiet night, around 2 a.m., I was restocking shelves in the electronics aisle when I first witnessed the true extent of the mystery. As I reached for a box of HDMI cables, I glanced up to see a shopping cart glide effortlessly across the aisle. It moved with an eerie smoothness, stopping abruptly in the middle of the walkway before resuming its journey without any apparent force driving it. My heart raced, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I decided to set up my phone to record the aisle, hoping to catch whatever was causing the carts to move. I positioned it discreetly near the entrance of aisle 7, the section where the disturbances were most frequent. Hours passed with nothing out of the ordinary, and I began to relax, the initial fear ebbing away. But just as I was about to pack up and call it a night, something incredible happened. The camera's timestamp showed 3:17 a.m. I heard a faint humming sound, almost like a lullaby, emanating from deep within the aisle. Curious and apprehensive, I leaned closer to the screen. There, in the dim light, a shopping cart began to move on its own, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. It zigzagged down the aisle, narrowly missing the shelves as if dodging invisible obstacles. My breath caught in my throat as the cart approached the end of the aisle, where it suddenly stopped, its wheels screeching against the polished floor. I squinted at the screen, trying to discern any sign of a person or mechanism at work. But the aisle was empty, no one in sight. The cart remained motionless for a few tense seconds before, without warning, it burst into a frenzy of movement, racing back and forth like a possessed beast. My hands shook as I held my phone, the reality of what I was witnessing sinking in. This was no prank, no malfunction. Something supernatural was at play. Heart pounding, I called over a few of my coworkers, explaining what I'd seen on the camera. They were skeptical at first, dismissing it as a trick of the light or a misinterpretation of the footage. But when we reviewed the video together, the truth was undeniable. The carts moved with a life of their own, defying all logic and reason. Fear gripped us, and one by one, employees began to refuse night shifts at that particular store, leaving me feeling isolated and alone in my quest for answers. Determined not to let fear win, I delved into the history of the Walmart where I worked. I discovered that the store was built on the grounds of an old manufacturing plant, long since abandoned. There were rumors of accidents and unexplained disappearances during its operational years, tales that had been brushed under the rug and forgotten by most. But the energy of those unresolved tragedies seemed to linger, intertwining with the very fabric of the store. Late one night, fueled by a mixture of fear and curiosity, I decided to confront the source of the disturbances. Armed with my phone and a flashlight, I ventured into aisle 7, the epicenter of the haunting. The store was eerily silent, the only sound being the distant drip of a leaky pipe and the occasional rustle of merchandise being moved by unseen forces. As I approached the middle of the aisle, the temperature seemed to drop sharply, my breath visible in the frigid air. The humming sound returned, louder and more insistent, filling the space with an unsettling presence. I shone my flashlight down the aisle, the beam cutting through the darkness, but revealing nothing, no one, no machines, nothing to explain the phenomenon. Suddenly, the shopping carts began to move again, this time converging towards a specific point near the end of the aisle. My pulse quickened as I stepped closer, heart racing. There, in the center of aisle 7, the air shimmered, and a shadowy figure began to materialize. It took the form of a man, his features obscured by darkness, eyes hollow and filled with a profound sadness. "Help me," he whispered, his voice echoing through the silent store. "They're coming." I froze, unable to move as his presence pressed down on me, the weight of his plea heavy in the air. "Who are you? What do you want?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. He reached out a hand, his fingers trembling as they extended towards me. "Find the truth," he implored. "Release us." Before I could respond, the shadowy figure dissolved into the air, leaving behind a lingering sense of sorrow and desperation. The shopping carts ceased their movement, the humming sound fading away as quickly as it had come. I stood there, shaken to my core, knowing that my life had irrevocably changed in that moment. The following days were a blur of investigation and sleepless nights. I combed through old records, interviewed former employees, and scoured local archives for any information about the old manufacturing plant. What I uncovered was a harrowing tale of neglect and tragedy. The plant had been plagued by unsafe working conditions, leading to several accidents and mysterious deaths that had never been fully explained. Families had disappeared, their loved ones vanishing without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and broken lives. As I pieced together the fragments of the past, I began to understand the restless spirits that haunted the Walmart. They were the echoes of those lost souls, trapped in a cycle of unfinished business and unending sorrow. The shadowy figure's plea for help resonated deeply within me, igniting a determination to bring peace to these tormented spirits. One night, armed with knowledge and a newfound sense of purpose, I returned to aisle 7. The store was as silent as ever, the air thick with anticipation. I set up my phone to record once more, positioning it to capture the entire aisle. Taking a deep breath, I called out to the spirits. "I know your story. I'm here to help you find peace." The temperature in the aisle dropped, the cold pressing against my skin as I waited. Moments passed with no response, and doubt began to creep in. But just as I was about to lose hope, the humming sound returned, softer this time, and the shopping carts began to move again, this time forming a circle around the center of the aisle. The shadowy figure reappeared, his form more defined, his eyes now filled with a glimmer of hope. "Find the records," he whispered, his voice steady. "Expose the truth. Only then can we be free." Understanding dawned on me. I had to uncover the hidden records of the old manufacturing plant, to bring the truth to light and honor the memory of those who had suffered. I spent the next few weeks tirelessly researching, uncovering documents and testimonies that had long been buried under layers of bureaucracy and silence. With the evidence in hand, I approached the local authorities and media outlets, presenting the story of the forgotten tragedies that had taken place in our community. The revelations sent shockwaves through the town, leading to renewed investigations and the eventual closure of the cold cases that had haunted the families for years. As the truth emerged, the energy within the Walmart shifted. The shopping carts ceased their inexplicable movements, the humming sound fading into nothingness. The shadowy figure no longer appeared, his mission accomplished. The spirits had found the peace they so desperately sought, their lingering sorrow finally laid to rest. But sometimes, late at night, when the store is quiet and the shadows stretch long across the aisles, I can't help but feel a lingering presence, a silent guardian watching over the place where so many lives intersected and so many tragedies unfolded. It serves as a haunting reminder that some stories never truly end, and that compassion and perseverance can bridge the gap between the living and the restless spirits of the past. The experience changed me, instilling a deeper respect for the unseen forces that shape our lives and the importance of acknowledging the stories that lie hidden in the shadows. And as I continue my night shifts at Walmart, I carry with me the memory of that transformative night, a testament to the enduring power of empathy and the belief that even in the darkest of times, there is hope for redemption and peace. Story number 3. The Eternal Shopper. I've always considered myself a rational person. Growing up in the quiet suburbs of Tennessee, I learned early on to trust my instincts and rely on facts. But working the night shift at Walmart shattered that belief, plunging me into a realm where reality and the supernatural intertwined in ways I couldn't comprehend. It was a typical Friday night in late October, the kind where the crisp autumn air carries the scent of fallen leaves and the distant hum of traffic. The store was mostly empty, save for a few late-night shoppers and the constant hum of fluorescent lights overhead. I was stationed at the fitting rooms, organizing returned items and ensuring everything was in its rightful place. The monotony of the job was something I had grown accustomed to, but that night was anything but ordinary. Around midnight, a gentle chime echoed through the store, signaling a customer entering. An elderly man, perhaps in his late 70s, shuffled into the fitting room area. He wore a worn-out cardigan over a plaid shirt, his thinning hair neatly combed back. There was something about his demeanor, an air of quiet desperation, that piqued my curiosity. I watched as he approached an empty fitting room, his hands trembling slightly as he placed a pair of jeans on the bench. "Can I help you find anything, sir?" I asked, stepping forward with a friendly smile. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine for the first time. They were a piercing blue, filled with an unsettling depth that made me uneasy. "Just looking for some warmth," he replied softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, understanding the need for comfort in the chilly night air. "Feel free to take your time. Let me know if you need any assistance." He gave a small, grateful smile and retreated into the fitting room. Minutes turned into hours, and the store's atmosphere shifted from bustling to eerily silent. The only sounds were the distant echoes of late-night TV shows playing in the background and the occasional creak of the building settling. Around 3 a.m., I noticed a flicker of movement near the fitting rooms. My heart skipped a beat as I turned to see the elderly man standing just outside, staring intently at the entrance. His presence was inexplicably heavy, as if he carried the weight of countless sorrows. I approached cautiously, concern etched on my face. "Sir, is everything all right?" I asked, my voice tinged with worry. He didn't respond. Instead, he began to move toward me, his steps slow and deliberate. I reached out a hand in a gesture of reassurance, but he recoiled, clutching his chest as if in pain. His eyes bore into mine, filled with an unspoken plea. "Please," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Help me." Before I could respond, a sudden chill enveloped the area. The lights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows that danced ominously across the floor. I felt an inexplicable fear tightening its grip around me, making it difficult to breathe. Desperate to assist, I tried to understand what was happening. "What do you need? How can I help you?" His form began to blur, the edges of his figure fading into the darkness. "They're coming," he murmured, his voice fading with each word. "They never leave. I can't escape." Panic surged through me as the fitting room doors began to slam shut one by one, trapping us in a nightmare of swirling shadows and ghostly whispers. The temperature plummeted, my breath visible in the frigid air as unseen forces pressed against the walls, making it nearly impossible to move. I grabbed his hand, my fingers icy cold, and pulled him toward the exit. But no matter how hard I tried, the doors remained stubbornly closed, the shadows closing in around us like an inescapable web. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, echoing phrases of lost souls and eternal torment. In a final, desperate attempt, I pushed against the doors, my muscles straining against the invisible barriers. With a blinding flash of light, everything ceased, the shadows dissipated, the temperature normalized, and the doors swung open as if by magic. The elderly man stood before me, his eyes now vacant and lifeless. I stumbled back, gasping for air, trying to process what had just transpired. "Are you all right?" I asked, my voice trembling. He gave a weak nod, a sad smile forming on his lips. "Thank you," he whispered before fading into thin air, leaving me alone in the now quiet store. Shaken to my core, I decided to check on the man later, ensuring he wasn't injured or in need of help. Hours passed, and the store remained empty. As dawn approached, the first rays of sunlight began to pierce through the windows, dispelling the remnants of the night's terrors. Curious and unsettled, I visited the local police station the next day to report the incident. Officer Daniels listened intently, his expression a mix of skepticism and concern. "Did you see anything else unusual?" he asked, scribbling notes into his pad. I shook my head. "Just the man in the fitting room. He seemed lost, like he couldn't leave." Daniels leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowing. "Do you have any idea who he might be? Maybe a regular customer?" I thought for a moment, trying to recall if I had seen him before. "No, I don't recognize him. He didn't leave any contact information or anything." He sighed, tapping his pen against the pad. "We'll look into it. Maybe check with the store manager and see if anyone else noticed anything. It could have been a prank or something more serious." determined to find answers. I spent the next few days digging into the store's records and speaking with my colleagues. To my surprise, no one else had reported seeing the elderly man or experiencing anything out of the ordinary. It was as if he had appeared and vanished without a trace, leaving only my account as evidence of his existence. Frustrated and increasingly unnerved, I decided to visit the store alone one night, hoping to uncover some clue that could explain the mysterious encounter. Armed with a flashlight and a notebook, I stepped into the silent building, the memories of that night playing vividly in my mind. I approached the fitting rooms, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The area was as deserted as ever, the lights still off, casting deep shadows that seemed to whisper secrets. I called out softly, "Is anyone here?" No response. I began to inspect the area, searching for any sign of the elderly man or something that could explain the supernatural events. As I reached the last fitting room, I noticed something unusual, a small, faded photograph pinned to the wall. It was an old black and white picture of a family standing outside what appeared to be the same Walmart. Smiling and happy, I picked it up, examining the faces. One of them was the elderly man, his eyes filled with the same haunting sadness I had witnessed. Beneath the photo, a handwritten note read, "May we never be forgotten." A chill ran down my spine as I realized the truth. The elderly man wasn't just a lost soul. He was part of a forgotten tragedy that had unfolded within these very walls. Decades ago, a family had visited this Walmart, only for a tragic accident to claim the lives of the father and daughter. The mother had vanished without a trace, her spirit forever bound to the store, unable to let go of the life she once knew. Understanding the depth of his sorrow, I felt a surge of empathy and determination. I knew what I had to do, to honor their memory and help them find the peace they deserved. I reached out to the local community, organizing a memorial service within the store, inviting the families of those lost to join in remembrance. On the day of the memorial, the store was transformed. Candles flickered in the fitting rooms, photographs of the lost family adorned the walls, and flowers filled the space with a sense of warmth and hope. As we gathered to pay our respects, the air seemed to lighten, the oppressive weight lifting as the spirits of the past found solace in our presence. As the ceremony concluded, I felt a profound sense of closure. The shadows that had once haunted the fitting rooms now seemed less menacing, the whispers of lost souls replaced by the gentle murmur of shared memories and heartfelt thanks. The elderly man's presence was no longer a source of fear, but a reminder of the enduring power of compassion and remembrance. But sometimes, late at night, when I walk through the quiet aisles of Walmart, I can't help but feel a lingering presence, a silent guardian watching over the store, ensuring that no tragedy is ever forgotten. It serves as a haunting reminder that some spirits linger, not out of malice, but out of love and the desperate need to be remembered. The experience changed me, instilling a deeper respect for the unseen forces that shape our lives and the importance of acknowledging the stories that lie hidden in the shadows. And as I continue my night shifts, I carry with me the memory of that night, a testament to the belief that even in the most ordinary of places, extraordinary connections await, bridging the gap between the living and the restless spirits of the past. Story number 4. The Midnight Call. I never believed in ghosts. Like many rational people, I attributed unexplained phenomena to tricks of the mind or simple coincidences. But working the night shift at Walmart in Arizona had a way of challenging even the most steadfast skeptics. My name is Alex Turner, and this is the story of the night that changed everything I thought I knew about the world. It was a typical Friday night, the kind where the desert sun blazed down by day and the cool night offered a respite from the relentless heat. The Walmart parking lot was mostly empty, save for a few late-night shoppers and the occasional stray car searching for shelter from the cooling temperatures. Inside, the store hummed with the quiet energy of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of late-night TV shows broadcasting in the backrooms. I was stationed at the customer service desk, my main responsibilities being to assist customers with returns. answer queries, and handle any issues that arose. It was a solitary job, especially during the late hours, but I found comfort in the routine. However, that night, routine was about to take a dark and unexpected turn. Around midnight, just as I was about to take a short break, my phone rang. It was an internal store number, something I rarely encountered. Curious, I answered, expecting a coworker or perhaps a manager. Instead, all I heard was a faint, eerie whisper. "Please help me. They are coming." The voice was soft, almost inaudible, but the desperation in the tone was unmistakable. I glanced at the caller ID again. No one should have been in that area of the store at that time. My heart pounded as I tried to steady my voice. "Hello? Who is this?" Silence. I held the phone to my ear, straining to catch any hint of a response. But there was nothing, only the faintest sound of distant footsteps and the unsettling whisper repeating itself. "Please help me. They are coming." A chill ran down my spine. I was alone in the customer service desk. Yet it felt like someone or something was there with me, trying to rationalize the situation. I assumed it might have been a prank call or a technical glitch. I decided to check the logs to see if there were any records of unusual activity in that section of the store. As I navigated through the system, the whisper echoed again, this time slightly louder. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, my mind racing. Is someone trying to reach me? I wondered aloud, more to myself than to anyone else. The store was empty, the only other presence being the security cameras that monitored the aisles. Determined to uncover the source of the call, I made my way to the store's security office. The corridors were dimly lit, the shadows lengthening as the night deepened. I entered the security room, the door clicking shut behind me. The monitors flickered to life, displaying various angles of the store, from the entrance to the back storage rooms. I began scrolling through the footage from the past few hours, looking for any sign of activity near the internal number that had called me. Most of the screens showed nothing out of the ordinary. Empty aisles, a few late-night shoppers moving through with hurried steps, and the occasional staff member restocking shelves. But then, around 11:58 p.m., something caught my eye. A figure appeared near the electronics section, a place I didn't frequent often. The person was dressed in outdated clothing, their movements jerky and unnatural, almost as if they were being controlled by an unseen force. They glanced directly at one of the cameras, their eyes hollow and devoid of life, before disappearing into the shadows. I rewound the footage, replaying the scene multiple times, but the figure remained elusive, always staying just out of clear view. My frustration grew, and the sense of unease intensified. I decided to investigate the electronics section in person, hoping to find some clue that the cameras had missed. As I walked through the aisles, the store seemed to grow quieter, the usual hum of activity dimming to a near silence. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly, casting harsh shadows that danced across the shelves. I approached the electronics section, the memory of the shadowy figure lingering in my mind. Just as I reached the end of the aisle, I heard it, the same whisper from the phone, now clear and unmistakable. "Please help me. They are coming." I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. The voice seemed to emanate from all around me, yet there was no one in sight. I scanned the area, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. But the aisle was empty. Panic surged through me as I realized I wasn't alone. "Who are you? What do you want?" I demanded, my voice trembling. Silence. Suddenly, the air grew icy cold, my breath visible in the frigid space. The lights flickered violently, casting disorienting shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. I felt an oppressive presence pressing down on me, making it difficult to breathe. "Please, help me," the whisper repeated, now accompanied by the sound of frantic footsteps echoing through the aisles. I backed away, trying to find my way out, but the layout of the store seemed to shift and change, the aisles twisting into impossible configurations. The footsteps grew louder, closer, and I could feel the presence of multiple entities surrounding me, their intentions malevolent and filled with dread. Desperate to escape, I stumbled towards the exit, the whispering voices intensifying with every step. The door seemed miles away, the distance growing as I ran, the store transforming into a labyrinth of fear and darkness. Just as I was about to collapse, I burst through the entrance doors, gasping for air as I slammed them shut behind me. Panting, I leaned against my truck, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. My phone buzzed again, but this time, there was no answer, only static and the faint echo of the whisper fading into the night. Shaken to my core, I decided to call my supervisor and report the strange call. As I dialed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, the shadows of the parking lot seeming to twist and contort with hidden intent. When the call connected, I explained everything, from the mysterious internal call to the apparition in the security footage. There was a long pause before my supervisor responded. "Alex, I'm sorry to hear that. We've had a few reports from other employees about strange noises and unexplained sightings in the warehouse. Some say it's just the building settling, but others aren't so sure. Are you saying this isn't just a prank?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He sighed. "I don't know what it is, but we're going to look into it. In the meantime, try to stay safe and report anything unusual immediately." As I hung up, a sense of dread settled over me. I couldn't dismiss the events as mere imagination anymore. Determined to find answers, I returned to the store the next day, armed with curiosity and a need for closure. During my research, I discovered that the Walmart had been built on the site of an old community center, a place where children used to gather for after-school activities and summer camps. Tragically, a fire had broken out there decades ago, claiming the lives of several children and adults alike. The incident had been largely forgotten, overshadowed by the rapid development of the surrounding area. But the spirits of those lost had never found peace. I decided to consult a local paranormal investigator, hoping to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Together, we returned to the store after hours, setting up equipment and preparing to communicate with the restless souls that haunted the aisles. As midnight approached, the store fell silent once more, the same oppressive atmosphere settling over us. We began the seance, focusing our intentions on reaching out to the spirits of the past. "Spirits of Oak Ridge Lane," I began, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at my insides. "We are here to help you find peace. Please, show us how we can assist." The air grew colder, the temperature dropping as if responding to our call. The lights flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that twisted and writhed across the shelves. Suddenly, the same elderly man from the customer service call appeared before us, his form semi-transparent and sorrowful. "Help us," he whispered, his voice filled with anguish. "They never left. They're coming back." I felt a surge of empathy, understanding the depth of his pain. "What can we do to help you find peace?" I asked softly. He pointed towards the electronics section, his hand gesturing towards the area where I had first encountered the shadowy figure. "Uncover the truth. Give us a voice. Only then can we move on." Determined to honor their plea, I vowed to uncover the hidden stories of Oak Ridge Lane, to bring justice and remembrance to those who had been lost. Over the following weeks, I collaborated with local historians, delving into old records and interviewing longtime residents who still remembered the tragic fire. I learned about the community center's vibrant past, the laughter of children, and the devastating loss that had forever changed the lives of those who survived. Armed with this knowledge, I organized a memorial within the store, a place where the spirits could be honored and remembered. The night of the memorial, the store was adorned with photos, candles, and flowers, a solemn tribute to the lives lost. As we lit the candles and spoke words of remembrance, the atmosphere shifted, the oppressive darkness lifting as a sense of peace settled over the aisles. I felt the presence of the spirits around me, their forms flickering and fading as they found the closure they had long been denied. the whispering voices softened, replaced by a gentle silence that spoke of gratitude and relief. As dawn broke, the first light of day illuminating the store, I knew that we had achieved something significant. The restless souls had finally found the peace they so desperately sought, their haunting presence dissipating into the morning light. The store felt different now, lighter and more serene, as if the weight of the past had been lifted. But even with the memorial behind me, the memory of that eerie night lingered. I couldn't help but feel a lingering connection to the spirits we had helped. A reminder that some stories never truly end and that compassion can bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Sometimes, when I pass by the store on my way home, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing in the window, watching me with a silent vigilance. It's a haunting reminder that while we may help spirits find peace, their memories and stories continue to echo through the places they once called home. The experience changed me, instilling a deeper respect for the unseen forces that shape our lives and the importance of acknowledging the stories that lie hidden in the shadows. And as I continue my shifts at Walmart, I carry with me the memory of that midnight call, a testament to the enduring power of empathy and the belief that even in the darkest of times, there is hope for redemption and peace. Story number 5. The Shadow in the Warehouse. The night shift at Walmart's sprawling warehouse in suburban Florida was a quiet one. As usual, the fluorescent lights cast a harsh, unforgiving glare over the endless aisles stacked with goods, creating a maze of shadows and stark contrasts. I'm Jason Miller, a third-year employee who's seen more than his fair share of late nights and lonely hours. But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to experience that night. It was mid-November, and the air carried a crisp chill that hinted at the approaching winter. The store was almost empty, save for a handful of other night owls, inventory clerks, stockers, and a few security guards. We had our usual routine, scanning barcodes, stocking shelves, and keeping an eye out for any unusual activity. Most nights were uneventful, but there were always whispers among the staff about strange occurrences in the warehouse section. I had heard the stories before, employees reporting feeling watched, hearing footsteps echoing through the aisles, and glimpses of fleeting shadows out of the corner of their eyes. At first, I dismissed them as overactive imaginations fueled by the monotony of the job. But as weeks passed, I couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease that settled over me each time I entered the warehouse. That particular night, the store was quieter than usual. The storm outside had subsided, leaving behind a heavy silence that seemed to press against the windows. I was restocking the electronics aisle, methodically placing items back on the shelves. When I first noticed it, a flicker of movement at the edge of my vision. I turned quickly, expecting to see one of the other employees. But there was no one there, just the endless rows of shelves and the hum of the overhead lights. Shaking off the feeling, I continued my work, but the sense of being watched lingered. I glanced around the warehouse, trying to convince myself it was nothing more than a trick of the light or a stray reflection. As I reached the end of the aisle, the temperature seemed to drop, the air growing thick with an inexplicable tension. My breath became visible in the cold air, and the fluorescent lights above began to flicker erratically. That's when I saw it, a large, indistinct shadow moving swiftly down the aisle. It was as if a dark blob was gliding effortlessly across the floor, passing through shelves and merchandise without a sound. My heart raced, and I froze, unable to tear my eyes away from the apparition. The shadow moved with purpose, heading towards the loading docks at the back of the warehouse, then vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. I stood there, paralyzed by fear and confusion, my mind struggling to process what I had just witnessed. The warehouse was supposed to be empty, and yet, that shadow had moved with an eerie intelligence. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and decided to follow the path the shadow had taken, hoping to uncover the source of this unsettling presence. As I navigated through the maze of shelves, the silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional drip of water from a leaky pipe or the distant rumble of thunder. My flashlight flickered in my hand, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Every step I took felt heavier, the air thick with a sense of impending dread. I reached the loading dock area, the space vast and dimly lit, filled with crates and pallets stacked high with merchandise. The door to the dock was slightly ajar, and I could hear the faint sound of footsteps approaching. My pulse quickened as I strained to listen, the fear creeping up my spine like icy fingers. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. I turned towards the sound, expecting to see another employee or perhaps a security guard. But there was no one there. The air grew colder, my breath visible in the dim light. I felt a presence, an unseen force pressing down on me, making it difficult to breathe. My flashlight flickered once more, and I caught a glimpse of movement, something large and formless moving swiftly across the room. Just beyond the reach of the light, I stumbled backward, my mind racing to make sense of the phenomenon. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The only response was the sound of my own ragged breathing and the distant drip of water. Determined to confront whatever was haunting the warehouse, I pressed forward, moving towards the center of the loading dock. The shadows seemed to writhe and twist around me, the temperature dropping even further. I could feel eyes on me, though I couldn't see anyone. The sense of being watched intensified, and I realized that the stories the other employees had told me were more than just tales. They were warnings. As I reached the far end of the dock, my flashlight illuminated a figure standing in the corner. It was tall and gaunt, draped in tattered clothing that seemed to merge with the shadows around him. His face was obscured by darkness, but his presence was unmistakably menacing. He stood motionless, his eyes fixed on me, an unspoken rage emanating from his very being. Before I could react, he began to move towards me, his steps silent and deliberate. The air grew thick with an oppressive energy, making it difficult to move or speak. I tried to back away, but my legs felt like lead, the fear anchoring me to the spot. The figure reached out a hand, his fingers elongated and claw-like, as if trying to grasp something intangible. I managed to break free from the paralysis, sprinting towards the exit with every ounce of strength I had. The warehouse seemed to stretch endlessly, the aisles twisting and turning in impossible configurations as I fled from the sinister presence chasing me. The sound of footsteps echoed behind me, growing louder and more frantic, matching my desperate pace. As I reached the front of the warehouse, I flung open the door and dove into my truck, slamming the door shut just as the figure reached out towards me. My heart pounded in my chest, the adrenaline coursing through my veins as I floored the gas pedal, driving away from the warehouse as fast as I dared. Breathing heavily, I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the shadowy figure still chasing me. But there was nothing there. Only the empty expanse of the parking lot and the fading echoes of my own fear. I knew I had to report what I had seen, to let someone else know about the malevolent presence lurking within the warehouse. The next day, I approached my supervisor, recounting the terrifying events of the previous night in vivid detail. His expression was one of skepticism, brushing off my account as a product of stress and exhaustion. But as weeks went by, more employees began to come forward with similar stories, visions of shadows moving through the aisles, unexplained footsteps, and the overwhelming feeling of being watched. Determined to uncover the truth, I began researching the history of the Walmart warehouse. What I discovered was a chilling tale of tragedy and loss. Decades ago, the warehouse had been the site of a catastrophic accident, a fire that had claimed the lives of several workers, trapping them within the burning building. The fire had been ruled an accident, but rumors persisted about the true cause, whispers of negligence and cover-ups that had never been fully investigated. The spirits of those lost in the fire, it seemed, had never found peace. Their restless souls lingered within the walls of the warehouse, bound by the trauma of their untimely deaths. The shadowy figure I had encountered was likely one of them, his anger and sorrow manifesting as a tangible presence that haunted the space. Armed with this knowledge, I felt a responsibility to help these spirits find the closure they so desperately needed. I reached out to a local paranormal investigator, hoping to bring some form of resolution to the lingering hauntings. Together, we organized a séance, inviting former employees and community members to join us in attempting to communicate with the restless souls of the warehouse. The night of the séance was tense, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation and fear. We gathered in the center of the loading dock, the same area where I had first encountered the shadowy figure. Candles flickered around us, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with a life of their own. The air was thick with the scent of burning wax and the unspoken sorrow of the past. As we began the séance, the room fell silent, our collective energy focused on reaching out to the spirits trapped within the warehouse. The temperature dropped once more, the air growing cold and heavy with the presence of the unseen. I could feel eyes on me, the spirits observing our attempt to communicate. "Spirits of the warehouse," I began, my voice steady despite the fear that still gripped me. "We are here to help you find peace. Please, let us know how we can assist you." For a moment, nothing happened. The silence was deafening, the only sound the soft crackling of the candles. Then, suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness before stabilizing once more. A low, mournful wail echoed through the space, sending shivers down my spine. The shadowy figure appeared before us, his form more defined, his eyes filled with a profound sadness and anger. "They took everything," he whispered, his voice hollow and filled with pain. "We can't move on. They won't let us go." I felt a surge of empathy, understanding the depth of his anguish. "We're here to help," I replied softly. "Tell us what you need to find peace." He extended a hand, pointing towards a corner of the warehouse where the fire had raged years ago. "Uncover the truth. Expose the negligence. Only then can we find the closure we deserve." Determined to honor his plea, I vowed to continue my investigation, digging deeper into the history of the warehouse and the circumstances surrounding the tragic fire. With the help of the paranormal investigator and a team of dedicated volunteers, we unearthed old records, interviewed former employees, and pieced together the fragmented stories of those who had perished in the flames. Our efforts culminated in a public memorial, held within the very warehouse that had been the site of so much pain and loss. We lit candles, shared stories of the lives lost, and publicly acknowledged the negligence that had contributed to the tragedy. As the sun set on that day, a profound sense of peace settled over the warehouse, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the spirits of the past found the closure they had long been denied. That night, as I drove home, the warehouse stood silent and still, the shadows no longer moving with malevolent intent. I glanced in the rearview mirror, a sense of accomplishment and relief washing over me. The haunting presence that had once terrorized the night shifts had finally been laid to rest, the spirits free to move on to whatever awaited them beyond the veil of the living. But sometimes, when I pass by the warehouse, I can't help but feel a lingering connection, a silent reminder that some places carry the weight of their past, and that compassion and determination can bridge the gap between the living and the restless spirits that dwell in forgotten corners. The experience changed me, instilling a deeper respect for the unseen forces that shape our lives and the importance of acknowledging and honoring the stories that lie hidden in the shadows. As I continue my night shifts at Walmart, the warehouse remains a place of quiet reflection and remembrance, a testament to the enduring power of empathy and the belief that even in the darkest of places, there is hope for redemption and peace. Story number 6. The Strange Playmate. I've always cherished the simple moments with my son, Ethan. As a single mother juggling a demanding job and the responsibilities of parenthood, those brief, peaceful instances were my sanctuary. Living in suburban Florida, our routine often revolved around school schedules, extracurricular activities, and the occasional weekend outing. But one ordinary Saturday afternoon turned into an experience that forever altered my perception of the world around us. It was a sunny, brisk autumn day, the kind where the air carries a hint of chill and the leaves have just begun to turn their vibrant hues. I decided to take Ethan shopping at our local Walmart, a routine errand that provided us with some quality time together. The store was bustling with activity, the bright fluorescent lights illuminating the aisles filled with everything from groceries to electronics. Ethan, a lively 5-year-old with an endless curiosity, was particularly excited about the toy section. His eyes sparkled as he tugged me towards the colorful displays, his small hands eagerly reaching for the latest action figures and building sets. I smiled, happy to see him so engaged, and allowed him to explore the shelves, keeping a watchful eye from a distance. As I browsed through the household supplies nearby, I couldn't help but notice Ethan was completely absorbed in his play. He was constructing an elaborate fortress with his blocks, occasionally glancing up to show me his progress. It was moments like these that made the hectic days worthwhile. About 15 minutes into our shopping trip, I decided to grab a quick snack from the cafe section, thinking it would be a nice treat for Ethan. I handed him a small juice box and stepped away, intending to return within a few minutes. But when I glanced back, my heart skipped a beat. Ethan was no longer by the toy section. Instead, he was standing next to another child, a boy around his age, who I hadn't seen before. The boy had an uncanny presence. His eyes were too deep, too knowing, and his smile stretched unnaturally wide. Ethan seemed completely at ease, mimicking the same movements and gestures as his new playmate. "Hey, Mom, look at what we're building," Ethan exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement. I approached cautiously, a slight unease settling in my stomach. The other boy didn't respond when I called out, his attention solely on the blocks. I reached out to take Ethan's hand, but he hesitated, glancing back at his mysterious companion before allowing me to guide him away. As we walked towards the checkout, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The boy's eyes lingered on me, an unsettling intensity that made my skin crawl. I glanced over my shoulder one last time, expecting to see him still engrossed in play, but he had vanished, leaving Ethan alone once more, trying to rationalize the experience. I told myself it was probably just another child who had wandered into the aisle, eager to make a new friend. However, the unease remained, a nagging feeling that I couldn't quite place. We continued our shopping, but the encounter left a lingering shadow over the rest of our trip. As we approached the exit, I overheard a conversation between two store employees near the customer service desk. "Did you hear about the accident last year?" one asked, his voice low and tense. "Yes," the other replied, glancing around cautiously. "They say it was tragic. A little girl lost her life in the toy section. No one knows exactly what happened." My heart raced as I connected the dots. The strange boy, the eerie feeling, could it be related to the incident they were discussing? I pulled Ethan close, his innocent face unaware of the storm brewing inside me. After paying for our items, we made our way to the parking lot. The sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the store's exterior. As we loaded the groceries into the car, I kept glancing back, half expecting to see the boy reappear. But there was no sign of him, only the fading light and the normal hum of evening traffic. That night, sleep eluded me. Images of the boy's deep eyes and unnerving smile haunted my thoughts. I couldn't understand why Ethan had seemed so comfortable with someone who felt so out of place. The words of the employees echoed in my mind, adding a layer of fear to the already unsettling memory. The next day, curiosity gnawed at me. I decided to do some research, hoping to find answers about the accident that had claimed a young life in the very place where I had felt such unease. Digging through old news archives, I stumbled upon a heartbreaking story from the previous year. Evelyn Parker, a 6-year-old girl, had been found lifeless in the toy section of the Walmart. The incident had been shrouded in mystery, with authorities unable to determine the exact cause of death. Rumors circulated about a possible fall or a medical condition, but no concrete evidence was ever found. The store had since installed additional security measures, But the memory of Evelyn's tragic end lingered in the community's consciousness. As I absorbed the details, a chill ran down my spine. Could the boy I saw be connected to Evelyn? The idea seemed far-fetched, but the unsettling similarities were hard to ignore. Determined to protect Ethan and understand what I had witnessed, I decided to visit the store once more, this time with the intention of seeking closure. On a rainy Saturday afternoon, I returned to the Walmart. The store was quieter than usual, the storm outside casting a gloomy pall over the parking lot. I approached the customer service desk, explaining to the employee that I wanted to speak about the accident involving Evelyn Parker. The employee, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, listened patiently as I recounted my experience. When I finished, she sighed softly, her expression tinged with sadness. Evelyn's story is still very much a part of this store's history. We honor her memory every year with a small memorial display near the toy section. You can visit it if you'd like. I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. I saw something that night, another child, but he wasn't there on the records. He looked familiar in a way that was unsettling. The woman's eyes softened with empathy. Sometimes, children who pass away leave behind echoes of themselves. Maybe your son connected with her spirit in some way. It's hard to explain, but many people have reported strange occurrences here since Evelyn's passing. Her words offered a semblance of understanding, but the fear still lingered. Is there anything I can do to help Ethan process what he saw? Encourage him to talk about it, she advised gently. Sometimes, acknowledging these experiences can help ease any lingering fears or confusion. Leaving the store, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I knew I had to address the situation with Ethan openly, allowing him to express his feelings and fears. That evening, we sat together in our living room, the warmth of the lamp casting a comforting glow around us. "Mom, why was that boy with me at Walmart?" Ethan asked, his voice quivering slightly. I took a deep breath, meeting his innocent gaze. Sometimes, when someone sad or scared passes away, their spirit might want to be with someone who needs comfort. Maybe that boy wanted to be your friend, to help you feel better. Ethan nodded slowly, his small hand reaching out to squeeze mine. "Do you think he's okay now?" I smiled softly, tears welling up in my eyes. "I believe he's found peace, watching over you to make sure you're safe and happy." Over the following weeks, our lives returned to a semblance of normalcy. Ethan seemed more at ease, his encounters at Walmart becoming nothing more than fond memories of imaginative play. However, the memory of that strange playmate lingered, a haunting reminder of the thin veil between the living and the departed. One evening, as I tucked Ethan into bed, he looked up at me with a serious expression. "Mom, I think he's still here. Sometimes, I hear him singing in the toy section." I hugged him tightly, soothing his fears. "It's okay, sweetheart. He's just watching over you, making sure you're safe." As I left his room, I glanced out the window, the moon casting a silvery light over our quiet neighborhood. For a moment, I thought I saw the silhouette of a boy standing in the distance, his presence fleeting but unmistakable. I closed my eyes, whispering a silent thank you to the spirit that had connected with my son, bringing a sense of peace to both our lives. In the years that followed, the story of Evelyn Parker remained a poignant chapter in our community's history. The memorial display at Walmart became a place of reflection and remembrance, a testament to a life lost too soon and the enduring bonds that transcend even death. And while the memory of that strange afternoon still sends shivers down my spine, I find comfort in knowing that Ethan has a guardian angel watching over him, a silent protector in the shadows. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind rustles through the trees and the store is quiet, I can still hear the faint echoes of a child's laughter, a reminder that some spirits never truly leave us. And as long as those echoes persist, I'll remain vigilant, honoring the memory of Evelyn and ensuring that her story, and the lessons it taught us about compassion and remembrance, never fades away. Story number 7. the hidden observer. The night shift at Walmart had always been monotonous. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow over the aisles stocked with everything from canned goods to electronics. I was Min Nguyen, one of the many employees tasked with keeping the store running smoothly after hours. Most nights, it was just me and the occasional automated cleaning robot. But every once in a while, something or someone would disrupt the silence. It was late November 2013, the kind of night where the cold seeped through the cracks of the building, making the air inside unnervingly crisp. The parking lot was nearly empty, the only sounds being the distant hum of traffic and the occasional howl of a stray dog searching for shelter. I was restocking shelves in the women's restroom when I first noticed it, a faint, almost imperceptible movement from within the stalls. First, I shrugged it off as a trick of the light or my imagination playing games with me. After all, I was the only one working that shift, and the restrooms were usually quiet except for the occasional sound of someone relieving themselves. But over the next few weeks, the disturbances became more frequent and harder to ignore. It started with small things. Items would go missing from the shelves near the restrooms, only to reappear hours later in odd places. The lights above the restroom flickered sporadically, casting eerie shadows that danced across the tiled floors. And then there were the sounds, soft whispers and the occasional childlike giggle that echoed through the empty store, emanating from the direction of the women's restroom. One particularly chilly night, around 2 a.m., I was making my rounds when I heard it, a distinct scraping sound coming from inside the restroom. My heart raced as I approached the entrance, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I pushed open the door, expecting to find an empty stall or perhaps a stray animal that had somehow made its way inside. But the restroom was empty. Confused, I turned to leave, but that's when I saw him, a man, hunched over in the farthest stall, his face obscured by shadows. He didn't move, didn't speak, just sat there, staring blankly ahead. I froze, my mind struggling to rationalize what I was seeing. Must have been a late-night customer, I thought. Maybe someone had slipped in unnoticed. But as I stepped closer, he vanished, as if swallowed by the darkness itself. Shaken, I stepped back, trying to steady my breathing. I called out, "Is someone there?" But my voice echoed back to me, unanswered. The restroom fell silent once more, save for the hum of the overhead lights. I decided it was best to forget about it and focus on the rest of my duties. But the image of that man lingered in my mind, an unsettling presence that I couldn't shake off. A few nights later, things took a more sinister turn. I was restocking the bathroom supplies when I heard the unmistakable sound of a door creaking open. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly turned towards the noise, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. That's when I saw him again. A figure standing just outside the restroom, a silhouette against the dimly lit hallway. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched me with an intensity that felt almost predatory. My instincts screamed at me to run, to leave the store immediately, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. As I took a hesitant step forward, he vanished once more, leaving me standing there in the silent, cold restroom, my mind racing with fear and confusion. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, I decided to set up a hidden camera in the restroom, hoping to capture some evidence of what or who I was dealing with. The next night, armed with a small, inconspicuous camera, I watched the footage intently, heart hammering in my chest. What I saw sent chills down my spine. There he was, seated in the farthest stall, his presence barely noticeable until he moved. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he began to lean forward, his hand extending towards the door cracks, fingers twitching as if trying to grasp something just out of reach. His eyes, dark and hollow, seemed to bore into the lens, a silent plea for attention that sent shivers down my spine. I reviewed the footage again, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was witnessing. It was clear this man wasn't a customer. He had no place in the store. No reason to be lurking in the shadows of the restroom. But why? What did he want? Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I delved deeper into the store's records, searching for any clues that could explain his presence. That's when I stumbled upon an old maintenance log from 2005, detailing a series of unexplained incidents in the same restroom. Several employees had reported seeing a man in white, his presence accompanied by the same eerie noises I had been experiencing. The incidents had been dismissed as pranks or miscommunications, but the recurring nature of the reports hinted at something far more sinister. Armed with this new information, I knew I had to confront the entity haunting the store. Late one night, as the rest of the store lay in silent slumber, I returned to the restroom, the hidden camera recording once more. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come, and called out, "Who are you? What do you want?" The response was immediate, a chilling silence, broken only by the distant sound of footsteps echoing through the empty store. I stood there, heart pounding, waiting for a sign of him. Suddenly, the door to the restroom slammed shut with a force that rattled the entire building. I spun around, panic gripping me as I saw the man standing at the doorway, his eyes locked onto mine. "You shouldn't have come here," he whispered, his voice hollow and broken. "Leave now, before it's too late." I backed away slowly, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. But the door remained stubbornly closed. The temperature in the room plummeted, my breath visible in the frigid air as the man advanced towards me, his presence overwhelming. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, trying to maintain my composure despite the fear that threatened to consume me. His expression twisted into one of sorrow and anger. "They took everything from me. I'm trapped here, unable to move on. Please, help me find peace." The weight of his plea hung heavy in the air, and something within me shifted. I couldn't turn my back on him, not when he was reaching out for help. "What do you need me to do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He reached out a hand, his fingers trembling as they hovered inches from my face. "Find the truth. Uncover what happened to me. Only then can I be free." Determined to end the haunting, I vowed to uncover the truth behind his tragic existence. Over the next few weeks, I immersed myself in the store's history, piecing together fragments of forgotten stories and long-buried secrets. I discovered that the restroom had been the site of a gruesome incident in 2005, a fire that had claimed the lives of several employees, including a young man named Ethan Ward. Ethan had been beloved by his co-workers, known for his kindness and dedication. But on that fateful night, something had gone terribly wrong. The fire had erupted without warning, engulfing the restroom in flames that spread rapidly through the building. Panic had ensued, with employees scrambling to escape the inferno. Ethan had been trapped, his screams echoing through the halls as he fought to survive. Despite the firefighters' best efforts, he didn't make it out alive. His body had been found days later, charred and lifeless, his dreams and hopes extinguished in the fiery chaos. But his spirit hadn't found peace. The echoes of that tragic night lingered within the walls of the store, binding Ethan's soul to the place where his life had been cut short. His unresolved anger and sorrow had manifested into the haunting presence that now tormented the store, trapping him in an eternal cycle of despair. Armed with this knowledge, I returned to the restroom, the hidden camera recording once more. I called out, "Ethan, I know what happened. I'm here to help you find peace." The temperature in the room shifted, the oppressive cold giving way to a faint warmth. Ethan appeared once more, his eyes reflecting a mix of sorrow and gratitude. "You've found the truth," he whispered, his voice filled with a sense of relief. "Now, help me move on." I nodded, feeling a surge of empathy for the restless spirit. "What do I need to do?" Ethan pointed towards a broken mirror hanging on the far wall. "Find my diary. It holds the key to my salvation." I turned to search the restroom, my flashlight cutting through the darkness until it landed on the mirror. Tearing away the grime and dust, I discovered an old, leather-bound diary hidden behind the glass. Flipping through the pages, I found entries detailing Ethan's life, the friendships he cherished, his dreams for the future, and the events leading up to that tragic night. The final entries were filled with fear and confusion, his words frantic as he described the sudden outbreak of flames and his desperate attempts to escape. The diary ended abruptly, the last page smudged and unreadable, as if the fire had consumed his very thoughts. Realizing that the diary was incomplete, I knew I had to find the missing pieces to help Ethan move on. I reached out to his former coworkers, piecing together the events of that night through their memories and testimonies. The more I learned, the more I understood the depth of Ethan's anguish and the lingering pain that bound his spirit to the store. One night, armed with the full diary and a newfound determination, I returned to the restroom to confront Ethan once more. I placed the diary on the coffee table, my hands shaking slightly as I began to speak. Ethan, I've gathered everything I could about what happened. I want to help you find peace. The air in the room grew still, the oppressive presence lifting as Ethan's spirit began to respond. Thank you, he whispered, his form becoming more defined, the sorrow in his eyes slowly giving way to a sense of calm. I can finally let go. As I watched, Ethan's apparition began to fade, his figure dissolving into the light that now filled the room. The coldness lifted, replaced by a serene warmth that enveloped the space. The haunting sounds ceased, replaced by the gentle hum of the store's refrigeration units. I stood there, feeling a profound sense of relief and accomplishment. Ethan's spirit had found the peace it so desperately sought. Freed from the chains of that tragic night, the restroom, once a place of fear and sorrow, now felt like a sanctuary of remembrance and closure. But sometimes, late at night, when the store is quiet and the shadows stretch long across the floors, I can't help but feel a lingering presence, a silent reminder that some stories never truly end. It serves as a haunting testament to the power of empathy and the belief that even in the darkest of places, compassion can bridge the gap between the living and the restless spirits of the past. The experience changed me, instilling a deeper respect for the unseen forces that shape our lives and the importance of acknowledging the stories that lie hidden in the shadows. And as I continue my night shifts at Walmart, I carry with me the memory of that night, a reminder that sometimes, the most terrifying horrors are not the ones we see, but the ones that linger just beyond the edge of our perception, waiting for someone to listen and help them find their way to peace.